Yeah.
Oh, look all the people rolling in. It's amazing when you see that happening. Oh, I see some friends. Hello, everyone. It's Thursday. It's Friday Eve. You all know the usual webinar drill. Say hey and tell me where you're coming from. It's sunny here today in Baltimore. Oh, we got some good places. Washington, Canada, Texas, Scottish Highlands. I don't know where that is. That's a new one for me. Denver, Colorado. It's in Scotland. That is probably the furthest, I meant to say, I've ever had someone attend one of my webinars from. Philippines. What time is it in Scotland? I'm terrible with time zones, so I'm trying to get better. Oh, it's late. Oof. 6 p.m. Okay. Three small kids. Well, you tell those babies I said hi. I love all the babies, especially ones I can say, give me a hug and go back to your parents. Now, this is all exciting today. We get to talk automations, so hopefully you're in the right place. And we're starting a few minutes early, so I'd love that you all showed up on time because it makes my job easier. We got stuff to cover, and then that way I'll be able to answer questions as we're doing the live demo. I got a small little presentation to start us off with, but I promise you will see some action today with me and Zapier and Financial Cents. Your computer clock was 10 minutes ahead. I don't even know how that's possible, but thank you for showing up on time. I always log in a few minutes early myself whenever I have Zooms or webinars because generally there's always some tech challenge. And I like to make sure that I'm not stressing about, working it out in case you got to restart the computer, right? You're excited to hear what I'm sharing today. Awesome. I'm excited to teach it because automations really did change the landscape of my practice. And so, it's one of the things that I think is super important, but I also know it's very scary to navigate and dive in. All right, it's 1 o'clock. We're at the top of the hour. I'm going to share my screen. Screen number 2. Pull my notes up here. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up today. This is going to be a walkthrough webinar on how to automate your accounting firm processes with Zapier and Financial Sense. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, I am Nayo Carter-Gray, the owner and founder of First Step Accounting, where we make accounting a little less taxing for small business owners all across the U.S., and I'm super happy to be here today. And I tell people that it's trademark, so please do not use it. I don't want to have to go to battles with you for using my trademark. Now, according to a survey by our friends over at Dext, Nearly 56% of accountants report spending too much time on manual tasks. So, this data from this survey goes on to really highlight the significant burden manual processes place on accounting professionals and then how it will impact our work in the future. So by automating tasks, we really can start freeing up our time, which will allow us accountants to be able to focus on more strategic work, things like building the relationship with our clients or offering those advisory services. How many of you are feeling a little bogged down with the manual data entry and doing all the things? Feel free to comment in the chat. This is an interactive session because I know what that feeling feels like because I too was there. So there are some downsides to having manual processes. First, they're incredibly time consuming, whether it's from the data entry or document management. These tasks can really eat up hours and minutes of your day. And they're usually the bottlenecks to the processes or things we're trying to do in the firm. Secondly, manual processes are prone to human error, from simple data entry mistakes to more complex miscalculations. How many times has anybody here ever added an extra zero or reverted the numbers, messing up a direct deposit or sending a check amount that wasn't supposed to be sent? Yes, I think one of us, one or more of us have done that at some point in time. Also, manual processes can reduce overall efficiency. So when you or your team members are bogged down with these repetitive, mundane tasks, it really starts to hinder what you can do and how quickly you can do it, which in this landscape, faster is going to be a little bit better because you can quickly respond to your client's needs or you can make changes because of market conditions. This also will impact your client satisfaction, and ultimately your firm's growth. So if your clients, aren't happy with how fast you're communicating with them or getting them information, it might cause them to have negative feelings with your relationship. Now, let's talk about the solution, automation. Key rainbow here. So, according to our friends over at Bill.com, automation can drastically improve efficiency. And according to their 2023 Accounting Firm Automation Opportunity Report, 90% of firms new to automation are reporting significant time savings, which is allowing them to focus more on those strategic tasks and client advisory services, which is the direction we all should be going towards. And I know firsthand just how automation can transform your firm. I can't wait to share with you exactly how I did it as a solo firm owner, and even now with a team using Zapier. So, what the heck are we going to talk about today? We're going to spend some time talking about the key processes to automate. Then I'm going to show you an example of what a process looks like once you think about adding automation to it. And then finally, we are going to do a walkthrough of how to set up automation using Financial Sense and Zapier. We're actually going to set up a Zap. Now we're going to start by talking about the key processes to automation. And really, the keys to successful automation is understanding your process. So, the goal of automating tasks is really to save your time, again, improve accuracy, and then provide that better experience for your clients. But you really cannot get there until you understand what your process looks like. And if you've ever heard me speak before, I love mapping out the 7 stages to a process workflow. The first step in this process is managing leads. Where are people going to find you? Secondly, is scoping and discovery. So, how are you assessing the client and the work that you're doing for them? Third, closing the sale. We need to win that sale and gain that new customer. Getting paid, invoice and pricing. So what are you using currently to get paid? Can we automate this a bit? Onboarding. How does your client know what to expect, what's next, what their responsibilities are? Managing the workflow. And this is actually performing the duties and then managing those deadlines. And then lastly is renewals or disengagement. So we have to look at the full landscape of what we just did for this client and determine, is this client still a good fit? Are we still continuing this relationship, or is it time to part ways? And as we look at each one of these phases, there are tasks we do in each of these phases. So we can break these 7 processes down into even smaller processes. So one thing I like to bring up when I showcase this is that when we're looking at automation, you're not trying to automate this entire workflow. You may be trying to automate pieces of it. So, this is how you transform your firm, one process workflow at a time. You do not have to do all 7 phases all at once. Maybe you just look at your phase of managing your leads, and spend, the next 30 or 90 days looking at how you can improve that versus trying to tackle all these things all at one time. So when we consider which manual processes to automate in each of these phases, we want to look for tasks that are repetitive. These are going to be the tasks that involve the same steps repeatedly. These are tasks that are like the same data entry or routine follow-ups. Then we want to look for tasks that are time consuming. These are the things that are taking up a significant chunk of your time. Things like compiling manual reports or tracking deadlines. What if you kind of write down all the things you're doing there during doing during the day? What is eating up your time? Prone to errors. Tasks where human error is common are things we want to try to avoid, like manual calculations or manual data entry. I am a big fan of not doing calculations myself. I will rely on an Excel or a Google Sheets, quick, fast, hurry in a minute. And then we want to look for things that are rule-based, tasks that can follow a set of defined rules and don't necessarily require subjective decision-making. Those are ripe tasks for automation. And then lastly, high volume. And these are the tasks that occur frequently and that are in large volumes, such as things like processing invoices or managing emails, and especially high volume tasks that can occur maybe in a condensed period, like preparing a tax return. Now, story time. How many of you, do me a favor in the chat, tell me how many of you are solopreneurs, don't have any team members? And I'm asking about this because when I started looking into how I could better my firm, I was a solopreneur and I was at this point where I was just on the cusp of burnout. I knew that I needed to do something. I wanted to hire someone, but I didn't have the money to hire them. And I was like, what can I do to free up some time to hire somebody or to bring on more customers in order to be able to hire somebody? And if I hired somebody, what the heck would I have them do? So I was at that phase, and so all my solopreneurs, I'm pretty sure you've been here, you thought about it, and you're trying to figure out how the heck can I do it? So what I did was really lean into what is the service line that is taking up all of my time right now, that if I could streamline it or hand it off to somebody else, that would save me the most time. Which service line is bringing in the most revenue? And at the time I did this self-reflection, it was tax prep. And so what I did was actually map out every single task that I had to do in this tax prep process that followed that stages of the workflow. And so you'll see my 20 tasks here. And even now, we have still about 20 tasks and I have team members now. But this was it. This was like my revelation. I was like, okay, now that I know what we do, how can I automate, eliminate, or delegate in some way? And so I went back to my process map and I was like, what pieces of the puzzle are giving me the most trouble? And it was these three key areas: invoicing and payments, getting paid, onboarding the client so that they knew what was supposed to happen next, and then me actually managing the workflow to make sure nothing was sliding through the cracks. So I went back to this list and I highlighted the three things that I thought, if I could change these things immediately or automate them in some form or fashion, I would free up some of my time and be able to bring on more customers and charge a little bit more so that I could finally hire someone to take over more of these tasks. And so the three things I highlighted were the client signing the engagement letter, paying a deposit, and filling out an organizer, the project being managed, added to my project management system as a to-do, and then requesting those documents from a client. And so at the time, we had a fillable PDF organizer, which we would have to add the client to our client portal, upload that organizer. They would then have to download it, fill it out, and upload it. So that just seemed like, how can we streamline and automate this in some form or fashion? Then I was like, after they do all of this, I got to send out the engagement letter with Word. I got to create it in Word and then send it out in Adobe. It just seemed like a whole lot. And I just knew there had to be a way to be able to streamline and automate this in some form or fashion. So is anybody else feeling the crunch of this? Is this resonating? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. So before you begin the process of automation, I do recommend that you write out every detailed step because you need to identify what steps are in your process in order to understand what it is you can automate. You cannot move forward with automation until you do this. And the reason being is because I've seen a number of people purchase a software and then say, I don't know what this software does, or this software isn't helping me. And it's because you bought for the software and not the features. You need to know what features you're buying for before you go ahead and pay for the thing. So if you don't get anything from me today, this is the one thing. In order to automate effectively, you need to identify every single detailed step in your process. Now, after doing that example, I recognized that automating the onboarding process was going to be the most impactful for me. And that's because onboarding new clients can be very time consuming, but it is repetitive. So it was one of those things that I was like, oh, I'm doing the same things over and over and over. It's ripe for automation. And automating that process really could enhance my efficiency. It could enhance the client experience because they were getting notifications and things right away. Which is all the key things that I mentioned earlier when considering tasks to automate. So let me show you what that onboarding process can look like when we're thinking about including automation in our process. So that initial contact. Automation can begin as soon as the potential client shows some interest. You could use an automated email response that ensures that their inquiry is being responded to timely. You can introduce your process. You can introduce yourself, your firm, and this will set the tone for that professional and responsive relationship that the client is probably looking for. Information gathering. We know that this is probably the absolute hardest part. So thankful for Financial Sense because they help make this process a little easier for me and my firm. So we know gathering that information from clients often involves multiple forms, multiple documents, but automation can help streamline this process because we could potentially do things like send out digital forms or ask them to submit the same documents over and over, which will help to save time and also eliminate and reduce those errors that are associated with us manually creating lists. Document signing. And if you haven't used an automated platform for this, you know how hard this can be. And we usually have various forms that need to be signed, engagement letters, consent forms, things of that nature. And, Financial Sense, shout out to them again. You can now do document signing right within the platform. But I'll show you how I do document signing when we get to our demo. But document signing, you want to make it convenient. So we want to eliminate the need for a client to have to print something and sign it physically and then re-upload it. System setups. This was the bane of my existence. So setting up your clients in all of our internal systems. And I'm pretty sure you probably are using just as many as I am. But this process, if we can automate it, will help you and your firm out because it can include things like setting them up in the accounting software or setting them up for the communication process, communication preferences. So like in your email newsletter or setting them up as a to-do so that no deadlines are falling through the cracks. And you can hit the ground running because it's been automatically set up for you. A welcome package. And I like to thank my good friend Kelly Parks for this one. She introduced me to the idea of sending out a welcome package once those formalities are all done and introducing our client to our firm's processes and with resources that they can save and have for them to hold and to keep from this day forth so that they would know exactly what was going to happen. And then they could feel like that welcome package was personalized to them. And it was delivered right away to their inbox so they didn't have to wait 5 weeks for it. So by automating some of these key steps in our onboarding process, we really can start ensuring that smooth transition over to your firm. And again, the goal here is to set that positive tone for the clients and to get you working sooner rather than later. So now that we've thought about how to automate, now is when you bring in the apps. And so when I talk about bringing in the apps, these are just a sample of the apps that we use for each of those buckets. So initial contact, my clients will book using a automated booking system, Book Like a Boss. We can then have them added as a lead or client in Financial Sense. We can collect information using Cognito Forms, collect payments using Stripe. We get our clients to sign using Cognito Forms. We get them set up in our systems, QuickBooks Online, and in ShareFile as users so we can have documents uploaded to our portal. Then we send out a welcome package using ConvertKit. And some of our clients like to receive text messages, so we set them up on an automated text message system called Mobile Text Alerts. The welcome package is a great idea, and I'm gonna tell you, I thank Kelly Parks every day for it because it has saved some skin from people not understanding what our processes are, because it's all outlined in that welcome package. Now, getting to the meat and potatoes, how to set up Financial Sense in Zapier in order to start automating. But before we dive all the way into Zapier, there are two important things you need to know about Zapier. First, your Zap starts with a trigger. The trigger is really what starts your automation. So say you want the process to happen, you want a new lead added when they schedule an appointment. The trigger here would be the new appointment. So in my case, if somebody scheduled an appointment with me using Book Like a Boss, that would be the trigger. The action is the next step, and actions are what your automation does when it's triggered. And so if your trigger is scheduling the appointment, the action is now going to be to add a new contact to Financial Sense. And depending on the plan of Zapier you have, you can add as many actions as you want. And this is where we automatically watch the work happen. You've created your Zap. You can then sit back and relax and let Zapier do the heavy lifting. They usually will email you if something is going wrong, but usually it just works in the background for you. So today, here are this is the Zap we want to create. The trigger is going to be when a new form is completed in Cognito Forms. We're going to set up a couple of actions here, finding and adding a new client and contact in Financial Sense, adding a new project from a template. In QuickBooks, we're going to add a new customer. We're going to add a new sales receipt. Share file, we're going to add a new client. We're going to add a new folder. We're going to add a new document. And then in ConvertKit, we're going to find and add a new user and then add a tag. And then if we have time, I'll show you some of the advanced features in Zapier, like using filters or formats and paths. Now, before we dive in, does anybody have any questions about what we just talked about so far? These are not the only Zaps that work with Zapier. There are like 500,000 or something crazy out there, apps that work with Zapier. So no, not just these little baby ones here. You will get a recording of the presentation. Yes. Let me see. I can tell you Zapier does have, oh, no, this is not what I want. I want to see how many apps are on Zapier. Well, we can go through that when we go through the actual setting up the Zap. It can be very overwhelming, which is why I tell you to map it out first. So if you know what your process is, then when you go to Zapier, you know what triggers and actions to look for so that you'll know if it's even possible to do with Zapier. Is Zapier free? They do have a free version. However, if you want to be able to use what they consider premium apps, you will have to pay for it. Will I be willing to share my welcome package? That is a no. I will make sure you get the slides. Tosin can send them over. I don't share my welcome package because it is an actual living and breathing document. And I've had people copy my things word for word or edit my stuff. And that I don't appreciate that kind of thing. So I believe Kelly Parks might actually sell a template, so I encourage you to reach out to her. But if not, Canva has some wonderful options that you can use as a starting place. But think about all of the things you want your clients to know, and feel free to share that with them. And we answered this live. Done. Awesome. Do I use Zapier to automate processes beyond a new client? Yes, I do. I can use Zapier to automate some stuff for returning clients as well. That was a great question. And that's one of the reasons why, if we have time, I'll kind of show you how we can use paths or filters to determine how you can do those with a form that currently has a new or returning client feature, because maybe you want something done differently, whether they're returning or new. Awesome. So I think I've answered all the questions up to this point. We're going to dive into the meat potatoes of Zapier. So when you get to Zapier and you set up your account, you'll have the option to set up a new Zap. And they do have this beta now with AI. AI is all the rage. But you can talk to it as if you would Chat GPT and tell it what it is that you're trying to do, and it will create a sample Zap for you. So it gives you an example here. You want to add a reaction to Slack message and create a task in Trello. And if you have those apps connected, it will help you set that Zap up. But in this case, I'm gonna go a little manual. So remember our trigger is Cognito Forms. So I'm gonna go in here. When you hit trigger, you can just type in the app that you are looking for, and it should pop up. And once you have that app up, you will see the first thing that pops up is events. So you want to know, you'll know you're on the right app because you should see their logo and name here. And these are the events that can happen once something occurs in Cognito form. So if an entry is deleted, then something can happen. If a new entry is added, then something can happen. If an entry is updated, then something can happen. So for us, we're going to use new entry, and we're going to hit continue. And if you haven't already set up the account, it's going to ask you to add the account here. And all you would do is log in like you normally would and give your permission to Zapier to use it with that app. Sometimes you need an API connection. And if that's the case, Zapier will walk you through where to find it. They usually give you very good detailed instructions. So once that app is now connected, what's the trigger? What entry do we want it to start reacting from? So we're going to choose our form, and I have a demo form in here, and it's the demo of tax organizer. So you'll see the form name, and then we're going to hit continue. And then usually what we do is test to make sure that this works. So when you test your trigger, you will see that it pulled all the information from this form. You got a green check mark, and then we can continue with the selected record. So because we are pulling an entry from a form, it's going to pull the most recent entry. So in Cognito Forms, if you've ever used a form builder, you know that when somebody fills out a form and somebody comes right behind them, the most recent is the one on the top. That's what Zapier is going to pull in for you, the most recent. We're going to continue now. So our trigger is when that form is completed. Now we want to be able to add a contact to Financial Cents. So I'm going to say Financial Cents and choose the latest. And you'll see my app is there. What do I want to happen in Financial Cents? So now I want to create a client. And you're going to hit continue. And I'm already logged in, so it's going to ask me to choose an account, and I'm going to choose ABC Bookkeeping and hit continue. Now, what do I want the client's name to appear as? Now, here's the beauty of Zapier. It can build, you can pull information from the form that we just imported. So you'll see number one, because that's step one in our Zap. And what do I want this to pull in? I want it to pull in the taxpayer's name. So the taxpayer's name is testing 1, 2, 3 test. And if I wanted to add additional information, I can add their email address. So taxpayer email. And then I can add a phone number if I had a phone number, taxpayer phone number. And an address if I wanted that to populate. So we're going to hit continue. And then we're going to test this. And it shows you the information that it's going to put in. Now, if we look for the client, we should be able to find a client called testing 1, 2, 3 tests. There we go. It worked. Okay. I don't know what the issue was, but we figured it out. So we can continue with our steps. we can add another one. So now that we've added the client, we want to add a new project. So we're going to go back to that Financial Sense app. I'm going to continue to use the 1.04 just in case something's going on. And then where is my, oh, was I supposed to do this in the last step? Update. Create a project. We're going to hit continue. I'm going to choose that account again, ABC, bookkeeping, continue. And the pre-work you have to do here is you need to make sure that your project is already set it up as a template in Financial Sense in order for this to work. So we're going to use that 1040 template. We're going to choose the client, and we're going to choose the client that was in the prior step. So I always go to custom, find client, and then it should give you a client name ID. I like to use a client ID because that usually works. And then we're going to hit the date, and you can say today. I believe things like today works. And we're going to test this step. Boom. We should have a project now under testing 1, 2, 3 test. We got a 1040 tax return, and it was started today. It's due on today. How did you know which client to choose? The client to choose is in your Zap. You wanted to choose the client the form was created for. So if we're setting up automation, so you're thinking in terms of future. So when a client fills out a form, I want a project created for this client. So when I went to the action, I chose the client ID from the second step in our Zap to find the client we just created. Does that make sense? You believe it only works with client ID, not the name? I have no clue. I have learned from experience that client IDs work better than names, but I always choose the client ID from the prior step. So, but that's a good technical thing we probably should have one of the Financial Sense people answer for us. In the event the two clients have the same name, this is why we use the client ID, because even if they have the same name, they won't have the same client ID. What's in the Cognito Forms triggered the project type? So this form is specifically a tax prep form. So the form I created is called Tax Organizer. So I know it's a tax client, and if they're filling out this form, it is a 1040 project. I have a different form for my business entities, and I can select based off of if it's an entity form, which type of entity it is, what project can be set up next. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, awesome. The second Zap is triggering the project type, not the Cognito form. Now, the third step is triggering the project type. I selected it in this step when I said actions and choosing which template to choose. So I said that when you set up this client, I also want this project to be set up. And the project I want set up is a template I already have set up in Financial Sense for a 1040 tax return. Does that make sense? And this for me is determined because we're using the 1040 organizer in order to be used as the trigger for this Zap. What if a client needs multiple projects when they set up? That is for you to imagine. So if they fill out a form and you need multiple projects set up, you possibly could do that. I know in this example, this is a 1040 client for me. And so we're setting up a 1040 project. Now, if you wanted to set up a second project, you totally could do that. You could say Financial Sense, and then you can set up another project. And if it's, let's say, maybe an onboarding project. I believe there is an onboarding. So if you have a client onboarding project you want to set up. You can totally do that. You can imagine all of the steps you want to happen when you are bringing on a client, and using whatever that trigger is to determine what the workflow needs to look like, which is why I say map it out first, then head over to Zapier. But in our example today, we don't need 2 projects. We only need 1. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. But it is totally possible for you to have multiple actions just like that. So now we have our client in Financial Sense. We have a project set up in Financial Sense. Now I want to set them up in QuickBooks. If I could spell QuickBooks, Q-U-I-C-K. Apparently I can't spell QuickBooks. And you'll notice QuickBooks Online is a premium app, which means you need a paid version of Zapier in order to use it. So we have QuickBooks set up. We want to create a new customer and then hit continue. We're going to choose this demo account I have for QuickBooks. The action, I want the name to come from Cognito Forms. So we had that taxpayer name. And then if you wanted anything else in here, company name, email, you can totally add that. So again, from the first step, I want the taxpayer email to also be added to this client. And again, you have all these optional fields, phone numbers, addresses, you name it, it can go in there. And I'm going to hit continue and then test the step. And then it'll tell me if it created a customer. It did. We're in our demo company. We're going to go to sales and customers. And we should now have a customer named testing 123. And there they are with an email address. Right there. Exciting, right? I'll go back to the dashboard real quick. Now, from here, I want to keep going. I've added the customer. They've paid me some money. So I want to add a sales receipt to record the payment. So I can create a sales receipt right here. Continue using that same account. The action, we're going to use the customer that we just created in step 4. And I like to use ID numbers here. Or you can find them by their email address. That totally works too. I've done that for returning clients. So adding I don't need to add the email address because they should pull it from the client. Now, the line amount from Cognito Forms, I had them pay. I can just type an amount and that's not the right one. I'm moving things around here. Amount paid. They paid me $0, but the description from the form. You can pull whatever description you want. You can name it something else if you don't want it to come from your form. That is totally possible. I just know I have a form here and it's called tax prep. Once I find the line item, I think I passed it. Here you go, tax preparation fees description. And then if you have products and services set up, you can select one. In this case, I don't, but we're going to just call it a Square gift card. And this is just for hypothetical purposes here, but we have all the things, the transaction date it'll use today, deposit to account. You can choose an account. We want it to go to uncategorized assets. Where is my, not uncategorized, undeposited funds? Or maybe I don't. Maybe I wanted to go to Square. Ah, where did it go? I'm like scrolling too many places here. We're just going to continue. And then test the step. So much time we have in a day. And you'll see we have a sales receipt that was created back over QuickBooks, sales, customers. We're going to find our customer testing 1, 2 test. And we'll see we now have a sales receipt here that says that it was paid. It goes directly to undeposited funds. The product or service is a Square gift card because I selected that one. But this is how you can start imagining how we're automating processes in Zapier. Next up, I want to add a folder to share file because this was always time consuming. Adding a folder and a new user, it was like, oh, it's crazy. So we're going to create a folder, have that account all set up here. The parent folder, if you use folders in share file and you want it to be nestled under a different folder, you can totally do that. I use my favorites, and once you select one, then it'll load the folders that are in that folder. I have a demo folder for you all, and we're going to name the folder. I like to name it tax year. You can use multiple characters. Did you know that? And then I want the client's name. So then I want taxpayer name. And then we're going to choose the taxpayer's name. Right there. I'm going to put a space in between those two. I think I put a space in between those two. Okay. Space. There we go. Now that's going to be the folder's name. I'm going to hit continue. We're going to test this step. And I got my demo folder right here, and you see that folder was added to share file. This is unrealistic because I'm talking out loud. I will tell you the first time you do it, it takes you a while, but the more you do it, the faster you get. But yes, give yourself an hour or so to be able to do all the things. So we can create a user. We're going to add a user to that folder. The email address we can pull right from here, taxpayer email. First name is going to be the taxpayer's name. This is where I would use one of the Zapier features to separate that out. So I'm going to pause on this one. We're going to go back. We're going to add the file first. We're going to upload a file. And then I'll show you how to use the name where you can split it. That's an advanced feature. We're going to use the folder we just created in the step above. So I like to use the folder ID. Bam. And then the file is going to come from Cognito Forms. And it should be one of the bottom ones. It tells me the file name. And this can take longer depending upon your trigger, or go faster depending upon your trigger. So here's the entry document. This is number 8. Bam. Continue. Test the step. It'll tell you if it's an error or not. I picked the wrong folder, the file. You got to get the right one. Entry document. Blame me here. Okay. Document. Okay. Entry document number 2. Here we go. URL. This one should work. Now we're going to test it. Test step. But this is why we test the steps, to make sure they're working out. Woo! You need to watch this and read a few times. Yes. All right. Back to our folder. We now have a PDF of that file. It's all blah, 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 blah. But we do have a PDF. And it works. Yay. So that'll save me some time, because now that file that client filled out is automatically added to Zapier, to my folder. I don't have to manually do it anymore. Okay, now Format. I wanted to show you all, this is an advanced feature. It is a free one set up by Zapier. And what I want to do is split the text. So we're going to transform, we're going to split the name. Split text. And the input is going to be the name from taxpayer's name, because sometimes it just gives you one big blob and you want to be able to separate it out. We want to separate out with a space. Uh-oh. So I'm going to copy this here because the space is going to be what separates the thing for me. Then we're going to continue and test it. Yes, so we got testing. See, worked. The name was testing 1, 2. Remember, testing 1, 2, 3 text. Now we can add another one. That one worked. Format again. Same thing. We want to do text. Continue. Transform. We want to split the text. The input is this one here. Taxpayer name. We want to do the space again, but this time we want the second piece of it. Second. Why is this trying to get me? We want second. All right, continue. And then we're going to test this. And then it gives me 1, 2, 3 text. And now we got that separated. So that is how you use one of the text formatters. That comes into place now when we want to go back to share file and say add a user. And I know this seems like, oh, why would I do all of this? But imagine being able to create users automatically when you're in the middle of tax season and you're getting maybe 50 new clients a month. That's a lot. 10 in a day. It's like, oh, who wants to deal with that? So now we will have the email we can pull from the first one, and then we pull that first name from the Zapier filter, and then the last name from the Zapier filter too. And then password, you can set a password if you want. Tell everybody the password is going to be the same. They'll get an email so that they can reset the password. Absolutely. Continue. We're going to test the step. It's going to tell me we already have a user. I know because that's my email address. So we're going to skip this test and keep moving. All right. Now, some of you mentioned, how would we do this if we had one form but multiple uses? You can have add paths. And a path, basically, with my form, this path could continue on this path if the filing status was single. Oh, where's my filing status here? It's the only thing about having long forms. You need to kind of know where all your what your fields are. And one of my fields is filing status, and I gotta find it. Or let's do new client versus old client. Are you a returning client? So we can choose this condition if the text can exactly match new. Or let's do returning. So I can show you how this works. And then continue. And we can test it. And so it worked. This would have been a yes because the path said this was a returning client. It would not have continued. Oh, wait a minute, because it needs to say returning client. Continue. See, you get the green. So you can create an entire track just for returning clients. Or if you want to create one that says new client, you can create a path, and that's path B. And why is this important? You might have two things going on down your field: returning client, new client. So see, this would not have continued for the new, but maybe you have different steps for new clients. Maybe you have, you want to add a filter here. Instead of a filter, you want to add a filter and say that filter is, I only want to do these things if my taxpayer is married. So I'm looking for the filing status. I gotta lean into it because y'all know I'm blind here. There's my spouse's name. So where is my filing status? I thought they put these in alphabetical order, but I believe it's under personal information filing status. So it depends on how you set up your form. My form has lots and lots of conditional formatting, so that's why my fields are so long. So please do not look at mine as the gold standard. Look at mine as the exception. Because I know for a fact that it is. Nobody is as extra as I am. But I like to collect, here we go. Personal information, choose it has to contain married. We wanted to do that, and then we'll continue. And it'll tell me that this would have continued if they were married. And then I can do things like add that spouse as a contact to Financial Cents. So let's do that. So we want to create a contact, continue, and we want to choose the client that we chose in the first. So say it's a spouse, we want to add that name, spouse, to the contact, and we want them to add their email address. Okay, scroll down just slightly. And I know we're coming up on time, so I'm gonna show this one last thing and then show you how it works in Financial Sense. Hit continue, test the step. Why is this important? Because now under our client, we have the spouse's name. Because if you wanted to send client tasks to both of them, it can automatically be done. Yay! Because their names would both be there. So does that give you an idea about how you're able to use Zapier, try to automate some stuff, make your life easier and simpler for those busy times, or when you don't have the funds available to hire a team member, or just to make your team more efficient by allowing them to use their brain power on the things that matter most, which is not data entry or setting up new clients in Financial Sense or in ShareFile or in Cognito Forms. I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to answer. So I see we have a few questions. I heard you can really end up with a very high yearly cost using Zapier. I don't have high costs using Zapier. I pay $20 a month and I get 750 Zaps, I believe, a month. So depending on how huge your Zaps get, what you can imagine with them, then I guess your cost could go up. If you have a team that you need to use Zapier, then maybe it can go up. So it really has to depend. You have to think about how you're going to use the tool. I am a power user of all of this. I was not a power user when I started. I literally imagined if these things could be automated, how my life would be. And I tested it out and made sure it worked, and it did, and I was a happy camper. I promise you the hardest thing is setting it up the first time. Once it's set up, it just auto plays. So anytime now when someone fills out that form, all of these steps will automatically happen without me having to do a thing. And so I might have spent an hour or two initially setting it up, but it saves me all those minutes daily, especially during our busy season. Does Zapier work with desktop apps or only online apps? I am going to say I don't know. I believe it only works with online apps, but they do, if you go to Zapier.com, they do have like a whole list of all the apps that it works with, or does you can say Zapier and whatever your app is. So QuickBooks Desktop, and it'll tell you if it works or not. But let me see. I'll show you on the screen where you can look at it. If you're at Zapier.com, you can just literally search and find your app. Just do a search and see if it pops up. Salesforce, fresh sales. It'll show you what you're looking for. So I don't know specifically what desktop app you're looking for, but I don't know. Imagine, see if it's there. The worst thing that happens is it's not there. You're in the same place you were when you started. Does that QuickBooks work with QuickBooks Desktop? It's talking QuickBooks Online, so I'm going to say no. So sorry. Does not work with desktop. Maybe that could be your motivation for going online instead of on desktop. You're so welcome. I appreciate you being here. I know this is a lot, and sometimes live demos can be a little crazy, but it's the beauty of a live demo is that you also get to see when things go wrong, because they aren't always perfect, but you just keep testing to make sure that it will work, because worst case scenario, it works. Thank you so much for having me. I'll stay on for a few more minutes if anybody else has any questions. But I will tell you the best way to learn how to use Zapier is to actually start using Zapier. There's no special tricks or tools other than to just write down what it is you're trying to do and then go to Zapier and see if those things are possible. Awesome sauce. Thank you so much for saying I'm awesome. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm so glad. Zapier is, I'm telling you, it's a game changer now that you can add the contact, the project from a template, and then add the clients. Whew. You just have to know what your trigger is. So what's that first trigger? Could it be that they scheduled an appointment with you and you can pull that data right from your calendar system?